Yeah, I'd like to talk tonight about Illuminati whistleblower Karen Hudes. A friend of mine actually on his show, Harold Fenton, interviewed her, and she's all over the internet now making claims that she claims that the Vatican runs the world. Furthermore, she claims the Vatican runs the world through the financial system, and that the people running the Vatican are actually a non-human species, an intelligent non-human species that's always been on the earth. Anyway, furthermore, she claims that things that Akhenaten in reliefs, in Egyptian reliefs, you see pictures of Akhenaten the pharaoh wearing funny tall hats, and she says that he's got a funny shaped head, especially large brain, and there's all on the internet you'll see a lot of these discoveries of skulls, of elongated skulls, and I mean, it's debatable whether this was just done for cosmetic reasons by ancient cultures, and one does read a lot about suppressed archaeology and giant skeletons, which certainly do exist, but it's very murky. I'd just like to say straight off, it's quite credible that the Vatican, it is in fact an extremely wealthy, it's probably one of the world's most wealthy organizations, and it's certainly one of the most, owns a great deal of land all over the world, and the Vatican owns land, and it has a great deal of money, and it's quite easy to believe that they have a number of different funds, sovereign wealth funds, perhaps, which can invest money wherever they like, in the stock market, or to banking, or real estate, or industry, manufacturing, all kinds of things, arms dealing. Now, it's quite believable that a very wealthy organization has lots of money, and it can invest money all around the world to the point of having a lot of control, because money talks. Now, but the thing is, this further speculation about a non-human species, Karen Hudes claims, like a lot of people, and this is a theory that's been around, it kicks around a lot, you see it on the internet a lot, is this theory that about Akhenaten and Moses, and at least the genesis of the Hebrew religion in Egypt. Now, for Hudes, Akhenaten was a later 13th century BC pharaoh, and there's a thing called the late Exodus theory, which was it's only been believed by archaeologists for the past 100 years, because the archaeologist Albright popularized it in the 20th century, but it originally arose out of mistake, because when early archaeologists discovered Tanis, because it was actually inaugurated and built by Ramses II, it got confused with the Pi-Ramses of the Book of Exodus, which the Hebrew slaves were forced to build. Now, but because they couldn't prove that the city of Tanis, which was assumed to be Ramses, because they couldn't prove that it had been inhabited before the 14th century BC, they just assumed that the Bible had got the dates wrong, and they moved the Exodus, a couple hundred years later, to fit. Now, since then, there's been some other discoveries, and there's been a lot more discoveries, and actually discovered, Avaris and of the other places talked about in the Book of Exodus, and they're different from the city of Ramses, because Ramses was a place that Ramses II later inaugurated, and anyway, there's a great deal of controversy, discussion about that. But the traditional chronology for the Exodus in the Bible is 480 years before the building of Solomon's Temple in the 10th century. So it's about 1500 BC we're talking, and the pharaohs at the time of the Exodus then were Amenhotep III and Tutmosis IV and those guys. And so in the traditional chronology you're dealing with different groups. Now, the reason it's always been, some scholars always point out the similarities between one of the Psalms and one of Akhenaten's hymns. And some people say, well, obviously the Hebrew religion had its started in Egypt, but again, it depends on what you assume, because if you say Moses was in the 15th century and Akhenaten in the 14th, 13th centuries, then obviously the Hebrew monotheistic religion influenced Akhenaten later, after the disaster and all the events around the Exodus, the plagues and everything. But if you say, well, there was a late Exodus, you can claim that Akhenaten's solo monotheism influenced Judaism. Post hoc ergo propter hoc. But this is why. This is why Karen Hudes, for example, says that the Hebrew religion had its start in in Egypt, and Akhenaten was Moses, and because this necessarily depends on the late Exodus theory, which was a trendy theory in the 20th century, but it ignores a great deal of the new discoveries, which have largely corroborated the traditional account.